Good evening. It's 17th day of October, which means we are 3 weeks and a day until the midterm elections. And we've been counting it down for months now, and we are really in the closing stretch of this year's midterm campaigns. And this is perhaps one of the most important elections for Oklahomans in a very long time. Tonight on the Hamilton Report, we're going to be taking a look at some of the racism that's existing in the Republican Party and how that is carried into Oklahoma politics, and how at the same time we're not seeing that from our candidates. But first, though, we've got a very special guest that I know that is going to surprise you, and you'll be very happy that you tuned in. It's all that and more on tonight's The Hamilton Report. Here, I'm going to ask if you would let me know in the comments if you're able to see me okay, because we are having some issues. So if you could just drop a comment in whatever program you're using, Facebook or on YouTube, to let me know whether or not you can see this broadcast, I would really appreciate it. Okay, thank you, Blake. I appreciate that. Well, we're going to jump right in tonight, because one of the joys about my job with the Oklahoma Democratic Party is that people reach out to me from time to time with ideas for the show. And as you regular viewers will note, that's something that I ask very frequently. I ask for you to tell me your ideas for topics or guests that you would like to see on the program, and you are great to do that. We also have a lot of pitches for the show that are not quite right, and sometimes out of seemingly nowhere, I'm handed a pot of gold. And that's certainly the case with my first guest this evening. As you know, the polls are neck and neck for the current failed governor of Oklahoma and Joy Hoffmeister, the Democratic candidate. Two polls today, one showed that Joy is ahead of Kevin Stitt by 1 point. The other has her up by 7. That is beyond the margin of error. And so things are really looking good, not just for the gubernatorial election, but for elections up and down the ballot. And so this is a particularly exciting year for all of us. Now, there's one group of folks that we haven't talked a whole lot about, but they're beginning to make more and more noise in Oklahoma, and that is independents, particularly the independent candidate for governor this year. And before I even mention his name, I want to introduce my guest to you, Zach Luttrell. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. What a pleasure to have you.
Hey, Scott, it really is a pleasure to be here with you and your audience today. So thanks for having me.
Now, you are actually related to the independent candidate. Tell us his name and how you related to him.
Yeah, so Dr. Ervin Yen is running for governor. He is one of 4 candidates running for governor, and he is the only one who is not affiliated to a party. He is my uncle. He is my aunt's husband, and a former state senator.
And we should say that he was a former state senator as a Republican.
That's right. Matter of fact, when he announced this campaign run, I understand that in 2021, he announced that this campaign run was as a Republican as well. And he only became an independent later in this year. So he wasn't in the Republican running for the primary. I don't know what the guy stands for. So
and that's why you're here tonight, because I'm not either. And one of the things that I do hear from time to time from people, particularly those who are registered as independents or libertarians, they're like, I'm sick of Stitt. I can't stand the guy, but I'm not sure about Joy because she used to be a Republican.
Yeah. And
I always say, look, she saw the light and she saw what was happening on the other side and said, I need to be a part of something better. But they're like, yeah, I hear you, but I'm just going to vote for the independent. Well, right now in Oklahoma, that vote is pretty much a wasted vote. It will actually um, probably very much help the Republican side of the ticket to vote for an independent. But I'm curious to know from your perspective, someone that you've known a very long time as a family member, what is it about him that makes you say no? This would be bad for Oklahoma.
Well, it's not that it's not a family thing. I love my uncle. Family is super important to me, as it is for most Oklahomans. But I am I'm concerned about the issues that are driving most Oklahomans to the polls, and what it is that I'm concerned about with Dr. Ervin Yen is um, some of his past history. He was the first Asian American legislator in Oklahoma, which is great. Like he's broken some barriers, but um, during the 4 years that he was in District 40, so Nichols Hills, the Village, War Acres, Northwest Oklahoma City, some parts of Bethany, I think. There were 20 bills. As a doctor, he's an anesthesiologist. He's smart. He's a smart guy. Um, Most of the bills that he introduced had to do with finance and health. He was on appropriations. But beyond the 20 in the 20 bills that he introduced, most of them common sense stuff, banning minors from tanning, little things, um, broadening grounds for unprofessional conduct, medical malpractice. There were also things that just don't work for Oklahomans, things that cost him his seat. It didn't work for Republicans. It didn't work for Democrats. It didn't work for working people. Um, so there were restrictions that he wanted to introduce on vaccines. There were mandates that people broadly rejected. Some of the same policies that Governor Stitt has introduced, he's carried forward, and some of them he opposes. But
I do know that he was adamant against medical marijuana.
yeah, so I will give him this. He introduced Senate Bill 745. So he authorized medical marijuana trials. He introduced a bill to do that, but he also wanted far more restrictions on than what actually passed, on what people actually wanted. Um, Not only that, so I'm a dad of 7 kids. Family, like I said, is super, super important. I've got step kids, bio kids, adopted kids, and foster kids who were adopted from our state's foster system. So knowing like what some of those challenges are, knowing how underfunded our hospitals are, how rural schools and hospitals are being underfunded, he still had the time to advocate restrictions on parental choice. So midwives, I delivered 2 of my kids at home. I was able to do that having a nurse practitioner midwife there. So we could be at home. We could be with our family. That was important for us. And that was the first bill I think that really hit, a bill that he introduced, that really got me activated and engaged, with him as a legislator. So I gave him a call and advocated, and he listened to my concerns, but here we are. I understand his background as a doctor representing a wealthy part of the metro, but we need to have a governor that works for working people for all of Oklahoma, right?
And I'm
So
glad you said that, Zach, because if you The thing, if you ask any Oklahoman, and the polls are bearing this out every single day, what is your number one concern? Education, public education. He hasn't talked about that on his campaign. What else are you concerned about? Affordable quality health care. Hasn't mentioned that in his campaign. So it's very difficult for me to understand what he's selling, except I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, so vote for me.
Right. And you know, I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat either. I've worked with Oklahomans for ballot access reform to open things up. I understand the frustration that he has, but he's talking about independent voters like they're a monolithic voting bloc, and they're not. They're not. I don't have the same interests as my independent neighbor next door. You know, I don't have the same interests as the used car dealer or the used boat dealer in Oklahoma City. You know, I have more in common with the guy next door who is working 2 jobs to put food on the table, or
Absolutely.
3 jobs, you know. So you're right. Like, public education is a public resource, and he's talked a little bit about funding, but you know, if we go to his history to figure out what he actually means, when he was a Republican senator, he wanted these school vouchers, which is the same thing that is happening right now. We're sending public taxes to private institutions. We're padding the pockets of private institutions. The same problems that Stitt has had with Epic and with Swadley's Barbecue, all of this corrupt nonsense, right?
Yes.
Having private organizations take our money, our tax money, it's I don't know if this is an FCC show. It's bullshit, Scott.
Yes, it is.
You
And
know?
you are the father of 7 children.
That's right.
And thankfully, you live in a metropolitan area. You're I think in Cleveland County, right?
That's right. That's right. Here in Norman.
Okay.
And
But
yes,
that's very different. You know, if there were such thing as school vouchers, and you could say, okay, you know what? There's a private school in South Oklahoma City I could get my kids to, and yeah, I'm going to do that. So it's a 20-minute drive.
yeah.
But if you live in rural Oklahoma, there may not be a private school within a 2.5-hour drive. How are you going to take advantage of that? And the problem is you're not.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's that whole scheme. And I'm not suggesting that your uncle in any way is like Stitt and his corruption, but
Sure.
the notion of our public dollars funding private institutions of education, and we've already seen the state is incapable of providing appropriate oversight. It's nonsense. So what I'm hearing you say is, from what he's espousing publicly, he's pretty out of touch with Oklahomans.
I think that in 20, like, the top issues that we see facing Oklahomans, right? Right now, as I see them, and as the polls see them, as I think a lot of your viewers will see them, Oklahoma's in the process of letting private entities take over our school systems, manage our SUNA program.
Yes.
So more public money going into private coffers. They are if we are taking away control from our elected officials and putting money into private hands, we're benefiting private companies at I mean, this is going to destroy rural schools.
Yes, it will.
It will destroy schools like our family came from. So my mother, we grew up in Purcell. I am a 3rd generation rancher on my dad's side. On my mom's side, They grew up on a farm. My mother did not have electricity until she was in high school. Like knowing, coming from the land, having to actually deal with the drought that we're facing. You know, the wheat, we can't plant it this year because there's no ground to plant it in. It's just
Right.
dust. Who's talking about that? Who is going to help our farmers and our ranchers, people working in our factories, folks driving our delivery trucks? There are essential workers. We gave all these accolades to our essential workers, but I'm not seeing our government, our local government, following through on that. I am ecstatic that with the election of Joe Biden, my pension was protected. I'm a second generation Teamster out of local 886 in Oklahoma City. My dad worked to put 7 kids through school. And I'm working to do the same with my 7 kids.
Yes.
You know, like this is our heritage as working people. We care about public education. We care about workers' rights and our good health care, sustainability. People who grow on this land, they know how important the environment is. The Republicans are not talking about it.
Or protecting that land that may have been in the family for generations, that now a foreign entity comes in and offers way more than what it's worth just so that they can grow marijuana on it. We're not talking about that either. But I want to take you back just for a moment as you were talking about education.
Yes, sir.
And you're so right that it would destroy public schools in rural Oklahoma. However, it's not just the schools. In some communities, the school system is the largest employer.
That's right.
And Zach, if once you take that impact, all the other people that you just mentioned, the truck drivers, the sanitation workers, the people who work in the cafeteria and clean the schools, the honest, everyday, hardworking Oklahomans have no promise of being able to stay in the communities that they love. Because if we destroy the schools, we destroy the community. We destroy the community, we destroy Oklahomans.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We can see main streets all over Oklahoma hurting. We can see rural communities who don't even have a main street really, really hurting. And Oklahomans deserve the freedom to choose a union and to organize. We need strong, skilled trades,
Yes.
so we can rebuild those rural communities. You know, if we really invested in infrastructure, accessible, affordable transportation, we could have folks retrofitting all of these public buildings to make them the environmentally sustainable buildings. There is so much promise here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
But we will not get there with Governor Stitt in charge, and we need to do everything that we can to stop him and his policies. They're not good for Oklahoma. From selling off our schools and our Sooner Care program, to denying the sovereignty of the 39 tribes in Oklahoma. We have 39 tribes in this state, and he considers them an obstacle and instead of a partner.
Yes, and that's
$50 billion.
That's more than any other state has. And instead of celebrating that, he has created a storm against our indigenous people. And that started in the beginning. But I want to take us back now to what a vote for your uncle actually means. Please. If someone votes for him as an alternative to Stitt or to Joy Hoffmeister, what really happens to that vote?
I think that every vote is important. I think that now, more than ever, your vote um, for policies that can actually benefit working people, I think it's important now more than ever. I think that if you really want to change Oklahoma for the better, you have to learn how to bring people together. And if you can't even learn how to get along with your own party well enough, if you can't get the Republicans together, how do you expect to get the Democrats or the 400,000 independents, all of different persuasions? He doesn't want to work with people. This campaign is just about tearing things down, and Oklahoma deserves better.
Wow, I could not have said that any better myself. You really hit the nail on the head. Zach, I know that you are in the middle of contract negotiations with the Teamsters, and this is a busy time of year for you. And especially, I would imagine, being the father of 7, that every day is a busy day for you. But I want to thank you for taking the time to share your point of view with us, because it's one that we needed to hear. I needed to hear from an independent about an independent, and you have just shared so much, and I appreciate your courage. And I'm going to ask that after the election season is over, that you come back on this broadcast and we'll have a more in-depth discussion, not so much about the immediate, but how we can look forward in the years to come in making this place a place that your children will want to stay when they finish their schooling, when they start their careers, a place where you can be very happy continuing to call home. Zach Flash Luttrell, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for reaching out, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon, okay?
Hey, thank you very much. Keep the Great Plains great.
You betcha. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Well, at the top of the broadcast, I mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit about the racism that is so prevalent in the Republican Party. And I want to show you this clip. This is from our friends at the Lincoln Project. And
some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft.
It looks like my technical difficulties have resumed. I don't have any idea what that's about, but I'll tell you what it is. They highlight the way that the Republican Party is using racism to drive an even further wedge between Americans. And it's a sad day for me in 2022 when we have to resort to racism to try to garner votes and support. Now, I will tell you, as much blame as I put on the failed 45th president for the rampant racism in this country, it didn't start with him. It started a very long time ago, like the Revolutionary War. But I think that we have not shown ourselves that we can come beyond that place where we used to be. And sadly, we're back to a place that's really dark. Ryan Walters, the best bro of the current governor, is the Secretary of Education. By all accounts, the man cannot spell, cannot use grammar correctly, cannot put together a single sentence without problems. But he wants to be the superintendent of public instruction. He did a video, another one of his car videos, where he's looking all, he thinks, cool. This time wearing an NRA hat. That was a new one, a new little prop for his videos. But in this, he said something that was so overtly racist. I mean, you talk about being emboldened to just say whatever's on your mind. He was talking about, if he's elected, there won't be any more woke schools. I don't know where woke became such a pejorative, because I'll tell you, I would much rather be woke than asleep and not able to pay attention to what the hell's going on in our state, what's going on in our world. Yes, we have to wake up. And I'm grateful that I'm awake, and I'm grateful for my woke friends. But here he is saying, we can't have woke indoctrination. Well, what even does that mean? I guarantee you he couldn't explain it if he had to. But then he goes on. Our children don't need to be taught CRT. There is not one school in this state, in this country, that's teaching critical race theory. It's not something that's taught in grades K through 12. It's very, very not very often is it taught, even in the college level. It was begun as a part of a law school program. But I'll tell you something. He brags about writing the curriculum for history, and yet he's saying that it's being taught. Well, you can't have it both ways, buddy. You're lying out of both sides of your mouth. But this is what really got me. We're not going to have woke indoctrination. Our children need to learn about heroes, real heroes. And he invoked the names of George Washington and Ronald Reagan as true American heroes that our children need to learn about. Not a thing about Dr. King. Not a thing about George Washington Carver. Not a thing about anyone of color who has ever done anything to advance the United States of America. Friends, this is nothing but a cheap shot, a dog whistle at the most base of his base. Why am I sharing this? Because it won't stop with him. If that gains even a bit of a foothold, look out, because the Oklahoma GOP will turn this into a KKK resort. I know that sounds harsh, and I know it sounds alarmist, but I think it's time for us to be alarmed. Friends, we have 3 weeks and 1 day until the election. Polls mean nothing unless we turn out to vote. And I don't mean just you and me. I mean everyone we know. We all have the responsibility to share with everyone we encounter the importance of voting and the right way to vote this year. Because if we don't, then we risk not only the future of our children, but the future of our democracy. Because what happens in this midterm election will absolutely, positively, without question, impact the 2024 election. Please take this as a serious warning. We are not hearing enough about the issues that matter, except from Democratic candidates. Democrats are talking about fair housing, affordable housing, about good, affordable, quality health care for all people, about economic opportunities that are not limited to the wealthiest in our state. If you had any chance to listen to any of our candidates, you know what they're saying, you know where their hearts are, and you know where they can lead us. And that's in a positive direction, one that truly, truly will make us proud once again to be Oklahomans. Friends, I'm so grateful that you tuned in tonight. I do not take you for granted, because giving up a half hour on any night is a big deal. And so for those of you who tune in regularly or occasionally, I'm grateful that you're here and that you invite us into your home. I hope that you will want to share this broadcast with your friends, because they need to understand what's at stake. And despite all the technical challenges we've had tonight, I'm very grateful that we've had this time to spend together. So until next Monday evening at 6:30, on behalf of all of us here at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for joining us. Good night.